Good morning, George. Well, during a trip to the key battleground state of Wisconsin today, President Biden will unveil his new sweeping student loan plan, which could erase or lower debt for tens of millions of Americans. So here is what we can expect. The plan targets runaway interest, canceling up to $20,000 for the 25 million borrowers who now owe more than they borrow. And those making $120,000 or less a year would be eligible to have all of their interest wiped out. The plan would also eliminate debt for borrowers with at least 20-year-old loans. Now, the rollout of this is set to begin this fall, and the White House says that combined with its previous efforts, this means that more than 30 million Americans could see relief. This is the president's most significant attempt to address this since the Supreme Court struck down his plan last year. But guys, it comes as the president is eager to show voters he can make good on this pledge as we head into the November election.
This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing overall. It's overall a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Dude is taking tax money and giving it straight to loan sharks. I mean, it's not the worst thing. No more interest for 120K less will save me so much money. It is. They're basically looking for any way to salvage the situation. Here's Biden talking about it.
Please have a seat if you have one. Thank you, Ashley, for introducing me and sharing your story. I, like an awful lot of people in this audience, was the first in my family to go to college and watch my dad struggle to help me get there and get all the kids there, and it wasn't easy. But, you know, I asked the rhetorical question, how can we be the leading country in the world without the best education system in the world and access to it? You and Sam are from rural Wisconsin, first in your families to go to college. Life partners, business partners, hardworking, paying off your loans, only to see your dreams being crushed by student debt. But now, thanks to what we're doing, that student debt is no longer holding you back. With this new freedom, you started your own business. It helps women and minority-owned businesses right here in Wisconsin. That's what this is all about. I think we all in this room share one goal: give everybody a fair shot, just a shot. Freedom to chase their dreams. And when Kamala and I ran this lead county, we made a commitment to fix our broken student loan system. Because while college degree still is a ticket to the middle class, that ticket's becoming much too expensive, much too expensive. In fact, things are a lot different from when college tuition was more affordable and borrowing for college was repaying those loans was more reasonable. Today, too many Americans, especially young people, are saddled with unsustainable debts in exchange for a college degree. The ability for working and middle-class folks to repay their student loans has become so burdensome that a lot can't repay it for even decades after being in school. And I mean that sincerely. Many of you know that sitting in front of me. Even when they have worked hard and pay their student loans, their debt increases, not diminishes. Too many people feel the strain and stress, wondering if they're can get married, have their first child, start a family, because even if they get by, they still have this crushing debt. That's not it's not just a drag on them, it's a drag on our local economies. It's a drag on, no, it really is. It's a drag on the economies. When you can't afford to buy a home, start that small business, chase that career that you've been dreaming about for a long time. That's why early in my term I announced a major plan to provide more than 40 million working and middle-class Americans student debt relief. Tens of millions of people's debt was literally about to get canceled. But then some of my Republican friends and elected officials and special interests sued us, and the Supreme Court blocked us. But that didn't stop us. No, I mean it sincerely. We continue to find alternatives paths to reduce student debt payments that are not challengeable. And altogether, my administration has taken the most significant action to provide student debt relief ever in the history of this country. And starting this fall, we plan to deliver up to $20,000 in interest relief to over 20 million borrowers and full forgiveness for millions more. I can tell by the looks on some of your faces, this relief is not news to you all, because this relief can be life-changing, just as you heard from Ashley. Folks, I will never stop to deliver student debt relief on hardworking Americans, and it's only in the interest of America that we do it. And again, it's for the good of our economy that's growing stronger and stronger, and it is. By freeing millions of Americans from this crushing debt of student debt, it means they can finally get on with their lives instead of their lives being put on hold. That's why every American makes.
As someone who works in federal politics, I find it a bummer that it's a fall rollout that begins in election time. Still great news, though, but friends are frustrated awaiting. I fuck with DA marijuana registration by Kamala for election strategy, though. I'm fine with politicians doing shit specifically for elections as long as they're doing shit. It is frustrating to have it be so obviously political, but that's politics in general. It's not the best possible outcome, but it's still good. This is complete horseshit. Don't be duped again. I think given the circumstances or the setbacks, if we are to look at it from the institutional hurdles oftentimes created specifically so that people can go, oh, we can't do anything. This is still a step in the right direction. It's just that it's still far from what was originally promised. I think the best possible outcome would have been to say, you to the Supreme Court and to say that he has full power over the Department of Education. Of course, only Republicans get to do stuff like that or stack the court, destroy the sacred institution as it existed. This is exactly how the old heads felt when Obamacare passed. Yeah, I mean, this is the best you're going to get with the Democratic Party. Let's be real.
Making a student loan payment should go to studentaid.gov. Studentaid.gov to learn more about these plans and see if you're and fit for you. Look, that's not all. People say to me, it's great you're helping people into college. How about all those hardworking people who grew up and had no opportunity to go to college? I get it. That's the neighborhood I come from.
What has been promised? What was promised is student loan debt relief across the board. And Biden has done some piecemeal student loan debt relief here and there throughout the entire 4 years of the administration. But what was promised was obviously just yeeting most of the student loan debts. So during an appearance in Wisconsin, President Biden said 10 million borrowers could see debt relief of at least $5,000, and the plan could help rally support among young voters, is what the New York Times byline is on this. Obviously, it's still too little. It's definitely too late. I don't know how else to describe it, but the point is, or the plan would potentially reduce the amount that 25 million borrowers still owe on their undergraduate and graduate loans. It would wipe away the entire amount for more than 4 million Americans. Although altogether, the White House official said 10 million borrowers could see debt relief for $5,000 or more. This is a way to, I guess, sidestep the Supreme Court somehow. He announced it here in front of you guys in Madison, Wisconsin. The reason for why he did that, of course, is because it is a college town, and it also is a very important swing state that he is desperately trying to hold on to in spite of the ongoing genocide that has made it more difficult for him to hold on to. This article from the Forbes will explain to you what he had originally promised. This is, of course, from October 7, 2020. Biden, I will eliminate your student debt. Reaffirming his commitment to broad student loan forgiveness at a town hall in Miami on Tuesday, Biden, in a response to a question from a young person concerned about student loan debt and lack of economic opportunity, responded with, you get all these degrees and you get all this debt and you get in a position where you can't get a job because no one is hiring or they're hiring at very low wages. I'm going to eliminate your student debt if you come from a family making less than $125,000 and went to a public university. Biden also said, I'm going to make sure everyone gets $10,000 knocked off of their student debt in response to economic hardships caused by the pandemic. Biden further proposed giving young people a $15,000 credit towards a down payment on their first home. This is how people accumulate wealth, he said. This is how people get started. We have to recognize you and advance you. You are the future. I am not the type of person who will ever criticize trying to buy votes. I think it's a very cynical attitude that goes against the very nature of representative democracy. The entire purpose of the democratic process is to buy votes. Oftentimes, the only votes that our legislators are looking to buy is the votes or rather the outsized political power, social capital that you gain from corporations and the wealthy. Rich people do not even ask to have their votes be bought. They demand it. They demand it through legislation. They demand it through lobbying. So when someone is seeking to buy your vote, when you're the average citizen, we have this like weird, we take offense to it almost. I find that to be odd. I don't think we should take offense to it. We should welcome it. Now, of course, it'd be much nicer if he actually followed through on his promises to buy your vote and did not rely on the unconditional support that he will get from you, because the other side is much worse. This hinges on the Democratic Party's modus operandi. This is how the Democratic Party operates, because they know that the other side is much, much worse. Now, of course, the promise that he had made, this one right here, he failed to achieve. One, because it was a broad promise. It was a big promise. It was one within his legal purview. It was one within his legal rights. He does control the Department of Education. They have abolished student loan debt before. They have put a pause on student loan debt repayments. If you guys recall, many of you have student loans. You probably noticed when your student loans, you did not have to pay them anymore. That was during COVID. Technically, because he has that promise, he could extend it permanently. Technically, he has that power. Oh my God, here we go. PolitiFact, Biden promise tracker. Where is it? Let's see. Where's the student loan one? Forgive student loan debt from public colleges and universities. In the works. Okay. Anyway, legal challenges were mounted by Republicans across the country, attorneys generals that are representing the interests of financial tools, for example, like debt repayment, like loan repayment companies and whatnot, immediately opened up legal challenges to gum up the works as best as possible. It was ridiculous because they just kept suing and suing and suing, even if the companies themselves were not looking to sue. Attorney General would sue them without the company's prior knowledge. They claimed that this was unlawful, an unlawful use of executive authority to enact the costly transfer of wealth from taxpayers who have not taken out federal student loans to those who have. They also said that this would hurt the bottom line of debt refinancing institutions, which is true, but ridiculous. But regardless, if you look at the New York Times article, and I'm looking at it right now, Mr. Biden's announcement was a presidential do-over. The New York Times says in the summer of 2022, he put into motion a plan to wipe out $400 billion in student debt for about 43 million borrowers. That was blocked by the Supreme Court, which said he exceeded his authority. In the months since, Biden has waived small amounts of debt using existing programs, but now he's attempting a larger effort to closer to the scale of his first try. The original plan relied on a law called HEROES Act, which the administration argued allowed the government to waive student debt during a national emergency like the COVID pandemic. The justices disagreed after Republican attorneys general and others challenged the debt waiver plan. The new approach is different. For months, Mr. Biden's education department has been developing regulations using long process authorized by the Higher Education Act. Instead of an across-the-board waiver of debt, the new approach targets 5 groups of borrowers: those whose loans have ballooned because of interest, borrowers who have been paying for decades, those who have economic hardship, and those who qualify for existing debt relief programs but have not applied, and people whose loans come from schools that have since been denied certification or have lost eligibility for federal student aid programs, which is ridiculous. They shouldn't have to pay anyway. That's like that last part is crazy. Administration officials said because the new approach is based on a different law, it is more likely to survive the expected challenges. They said lawyers for the White House and the Education Department have studied the Supreme Court ruling and have designed new programs to make sure it does not violate the principles laid out by the justices. What? I did cover the local elections in Turkey, chatter. Please cover some global issues at least sometimes. A small 5 to 10% wouldn't hurt anybody, and you can go back to your American obsession. Oh, I'm an American political commentator covering American politics. I did talk about the local elections in Turkey, and I cover global politics almost every single day. I talk about Israel, Palestine every single day for the past 6 months. Calm down, okay? Also, American politics obviously impacts your life in ways that you recognize or don't recognize, regardless of your recognition. But lawyers for those who oppose the approach are likely to argue that waiving the debt is unfair to those who already paid back their loans or never took out college loans in the first place. That argument helps sway the justices in the last case. It's a bullshit argument. And the justices are not looking to be swayed, even though they have an honest opinion on this, an honest approach on this. The justices are operating on the boundaries of on their political interest. They are there to operate as a vestige of the Republican Party. That is what the reactionary justices are there to do. This argument is an idiotic argument on its face regardless. The notion that, oh, well, what about the people that paid for it? It's unfair to them is insane. That is insane. That is not the American way, or it should not be the theoretical American way. The notion that, like, if there was, for example, a cure for cancer, that like former cancer patients or the friends and family members of like those who have fallen to cancer would not advocate against that cancer treatment being opened up to every single person. It's so dumb. I had cancer. I fixed it the right way. You can't get this cure. I suffered this injustice, so others must suffer as well, is idiotic. Also, the notion that Americans ever have cared, or the Supreme Court has ever cared about fairness, is really silly. They do not care. Capitalism is an inherently unfair system. Ridiculous. Fairness only is used, or rather weaponized, as a counter argument when you are helping a broad swath of the society that is normally not helped. Neil McCluskey, the director of the Center for Educational Freedom at Cato Institute, called the new plan dangerous policy that is unfair to taxpayers and would cause colleges and universities to raise their prices. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the authority. Like, see, this is how you know they're throwing shit at a wall, because they're trying to cover it from every angle. They're like, oh, well, colleges are really expensive, and they'll get even more expensive because they'll get comfortable. It's a dangerous policy. Oh, it's unfair. It's unfair to those who paid. Well, as someone who has not only been fortunate enough to achieve financial security that I can pay my own student loans, my parents' student loans, my brother's student loans, I say no one else should have to suffer. This is ridiculous. But even silly bullshit arguments can be utilized by the United States Supreme Court of Justice, like, for example, when Antonin Scalia very famously advocated for the use of torture, nay, enhanced interrogation, by bringing up the fictional television series with Kiefer Sutherland starring called 24, where he brought up a hypothetical where Jack Bauer had to torture a terrorist to figure out plans and thwart a possible nuclear attack on Washington, D.C. or New York or one of the major cities. I don't remember which one. That is not an argument that withstands the test of time or just, I don't know, pure reasoning by anyone. It was Los Angeles. Never mind. Sorry. The one city that I did not bring up. That is a ridiculous argument. And yet it was valid for the Supreme Court. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the authority to enact law, and the Supreme Court has already struck down a unilateral mass student debt cancellation scheme by Biden administration. It would stick taxpayers with bills for debts other people chose for their own financial advancement. We never have this kind of smoke for any kind of executive action in any other direction. This is within the legal purview of the executive authority, the executive office. The Department of Education is controlled by the White House. We have already exercised this control. Where'd you go to school? Do you have any debt? I did. I used to have debt. Yes. Dude, it is impossible to go to American college and not have debt. It's virtually impossible. You have to be really, really, and I mean really rich. You have to be what my haters imagine my lifestyle is like. A son of a multi-billionaire Turkish oligarch with a major trust fund to be able to go to American college without any loans whatsoever. And I say this as someone who got a shit ton of scholarships as well. There was still a lot of shit to pay for. It is also one of the major principles behind throwing endless bodies at the American military machine. College is the only viable solution for upward social mobility. It's not even that viable as it once was. It is now a requirement. And because of how costly college is, the Department of Defense uses that as an opportunity to engage in a poverty draft. The legal challenges will take months to resolve, and that could leave the debt relief plan in limbo as voters go to the polls in November to choose between Mr. Biden and former President Donald Trump. Members of Mr. Biden's administration fanned out across the country on Monday to talk about the new plan, betting that it will rally support among voters who were disappointed that the court blocked the first one, which would have eliminated up to $20,000 in debts for tens of millions of borrowers. An objectively good thing, if you recall, which I was very much on board with, which I road for Biden on. There have been a couple moments of clarity and a couple really awesome moments in the Brandon administration. Fully facilitating the withdrawal from Afghanistan was one of those moments, which everybody yelled at him over. This was another one, which everybody also yelled at him over, because it does seem like the entirety of American mainstream media, all of our corporations, all of our wealthy, are just undesirable, incredibly reactionary monsters when it comes to doing good things and doing right by those who have been f***ed over by the systems. There's never a moment where we can, God forbid, help those who need it. There was never this level of discourse over PPP loan relief. Never. It was a given. Those loans had conditions. None of those conditions are met. Those loans were given for a purpose. The purpose was to continue paying workers that weren't going into work to help facilitate that payment, because we did not have like a unilateral, federally controlled labor structure where every single person, or some kind of federal banking structure. So we had to do it in the most American way possible, with cash infusions to corporations. Those corporations, small businesses, large businesses alike, never took those PPP loans and then met the conditions, such as paying their workforce, but it did not matter. That was a tremendous amount of loans, tremendous, massive number. I don't recall the exact size of the PPP loans in general, but notice how nobody made a big stink about it. Why? Because that was a cash transfer to corporations. Does that not strike you as odd that when corporations get a cash transfer from the federal government with conditions and nobody meets those conditions at all? Here's the PPP loans that cost nearly double what Biden's student debt forgiveness would have. Here's how the programs compare. Almost every single person that is a small business owner, big business owner that took a PPP loan, which includes members of Congress, mind you, had no issues with the $785 billion that was forgiven. $790 billion in PPP loans. Out of the $790 billion, $757 billion was forgiven. Wow. Nobody chirped about that shit, though. God forbid you bring that shit up, and it wasn't even utilized appropriately. I don't want to hear about the fact that the PPP loan relief came from congressional authorization, whereas student loan debt restructuring or student loan debt relief actually comes from the executive office. I don't give a shit, okay? I care about the impact of the legislation. I care about the impact of the actions. I don't give a shit about how the sausage was made in this regard. This kind of structural hurdle is only talked about when it's actually simply a conversation about helping the poor. That's it. Structural hurdles are only a problem when you want to pass legislation through budget reconciliation, for example, and the Senate parliamentarian decides that a $15 minimum wage does not impact the budget, does not impact the deficit, and therefore it cannot be a part of the budget reconciliation conversation. And then the Democrats go, "Oh, what can we do?" It's bullshit. They do this every time. These conversations are incredibly silly. And even on the institutional hurdles conversation, there are ways out of it, and yet people choose not to take them. How are they able to forgive PPP loans easily? Brother, what do you mean? Welcome to the United States of America. A corporation, no matter what size, has more rights than the average citizen here. This is a country designed to churn out outcomes such as this one. And that's why increasing taxes is almost a political impossibility, whereas decreasing taxes is a given, is expected, is promoted, is celebrated by both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party alike in many instances. They're both unnecessary bailouts. Don't put one against the other. Go work for a nonprofit for 10 years and have your unsub federal loans forgiven. That's what I did. Yeah, you're a idiot, dude. I'm sorry to say this, but you're a dumbass. What do you mean? Everybody needs to go work for a nonprofit for 10 years. This is not only the dumbest argument you could make, but it's also one that just completely is oblivious to the reality elsewhere. The reason why you go and get a college education is not because, oh, it's so much fun. I mean, you can surely have fun there as well. But the reason why this is reactionary peasant mindset is because it fails to capture broader thinking. You are not looking at other countries and trying to understand why other countries have college for free. College education is good for making a more productive labor force. In an increasingly global planet, we need to have competitive labor. This is why other countries actually make it so that it is not only free to go to college, but in some nations, they will pay you, especially if you are taking on a specific role that the government has decided we need more of. That's the normal way to do it. That's the good way to do it. That's the smart way to do it. Why do they do it? Is it because they're stupid? Is it because countries like Germany are dumb? They just don't understand it. Is it because they're communist? They're not. This is positive overall, even for capitalism. Having a more educated workforce is a good thing, objectively so. Paywalling education, higher education, is stupid. I don't understand how someone can look to this and go, I suffered. I worked for a nonprofit for 10 years, and that's the only way that through indentured servitude, I was able to, destroy my student loans with that shouldn't even exist to begin with. Free college, but country in debt. Brother, free college, but country in unpayable debt. We are the United States of America. That is idiotic. If countries that do not have their own currency can engage in programs such as this one, then the United States of America certainly can. Debt to who is the question you must ask. Yeah, also, you are correct on this, nod or smoke time. The executive authority for student loan forgiveness was specifically granted by Congress in the Higher Ed and Heroes Act. So the president having executive authority over student loan debt relief was already given to the executive by Congress. But of course, as is the case of Roe v. Wade, we know now, I think, or many Americans know, the reality that I've been chirping about for many, many years, which is that the Supreme Court of the United States does not operate with real legal considerations. Constitutional law is not what is at play here. It's more so just whatever suits the needs and interests of capital owners. The court interpretation is bullshit. That's my point. The court interprets things in a way that suits their needs, in a way that suits the needs of their corporate benefactors. America doesn't do regular capitalism that other European social democracies engage in. America does extra capitalism, extra capitalism. It is hyper exploitative because in the short term, it offers great benefits to a select few. It is our greed that will lead to our demise. It is operating in the way that capitalism is supposed to operate, by, mind you, without any kind of state restrictions or state regulation on it. No checks, no balances whatsoever. The only time the state interferes in capitalism is once again to suit the needs of corporations. This is neoliberalism. Not a true free market, mind you, but a market where the government only steps in to favor corporations over the interests of the workers, to favor capital owners in the interests of the workers. Obamacare is a great example of this, and even that was fought against. Obamacare is a right-wing policy. It was designed by the Heritage Foundation in 1992 as a way to counter true socialized medicine, true public health care. It was implemented first by a Republican by the name of Mitt Romney when he was the governor of the state of Massachusetts. It is yet again a cash transfer to private healthcare providers. That's what Obamacare does. Now, were there good provisions in Obamacare? Absolutely. Like the abolition of refusing to offer healthcare by healthcare providers to those with pre-existing conditions. That was a good thing. That is what they wanted to destroy, the capital owners. The only good thing in Germany is free education and healthcare across Europe, I guess. The real question is, does Hasan care? I do care, very much so.